Hello everyone, welcome to The Insight. I am Bable Jonathan. Ahead of the 2025 elections in Cameroon and close to 8 years into the armed conflict in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, which is one of the major cracks on the nationhood, we are looking at the state of the nation. Governance, a possible change at the helm of the state via the ballot box, a coalition of opposition parties, or a political transition. As politicians or political parties warm up for the 2025 presidential election, two coalitions led by Honorable Jean-Michel Ninche and Olivier Billet have come into existence, but quickly banned by the Minister of Territorial Administration, Tanganji Paul, who qualified them as illegal, fake and clandestine, and banned the coalitions from carrying out any activity. And of course, we are also looking at issues concerning the state of the nation. We are looking at how to heal the sick nationhood that is seriously threatened by the Anglophone crisis, plus issues of human rights and the judicial system of the country. Meet our guest in some few seconds. Our guest today is Barrister Ayah Abine, former judge of the Supreme Court of Cameroon, founder and former president of the Popular Action Party, the PAP, humanitarian, founder of St. Valentine Orphanage. Barrister, we are meeting you today on a wheelchair, and you've been on this wheelchair since 2022. That's getting to 2 years now. Can you tell us what is the situation now as far as your health is concerned?
Well, as you see me, and the spectators are seeing me, this is all me. You've already said rightly that I've been in this wheelchair since June 2022. End of May this year will make me 24 months on this chair. I was taken ill in January 2019. The situation degenerated steadily till June 2022, when I could no longer stand on my own feet. I got paralyzed from the waist to the toes and got confined to this wheelchair. It would be recalled that on the 21st of January 2017, I was kidnapped from my house in Yaoundé, from my residence in Yaoundé, and kept in captivity for 223 days without charge. Some fine day, I was just told to walk back home. While in detention, I lost my left eye. I now see only with the right eye. I developed a cardiac malaise, which is still on. Only yesterday, I went to a center in Douala, where I have my medical checkup every month, and I was advised to meet a cardiologist. That's me. How did we get to this point where I climbed the judicial ladder to the top, got to index 1,400. Nobody goes beyond. Saved my country for at least 4 decades, only to end up the way I am. I'm unable to foot my medical bills because not only has my pension been retained by the government without any reason, without even informing me, for close to 7 years, but for over 5 years now, my bank accounts have been frozen. Nobody has told me why they were frozen. In fact, nobody has told me my accounts were frozen. I went to withdraw money to buy my medicines, only to find that I could not do it. And the bank informed me orally that they had been ordered to freeze my account. I have millions lying somewhere, yet I have nothing in terms of money to buy my medicines. My children have sacrificed. God gave me wonderful children, but then they have their own problems to solve. I am where I am.
You serve the nation to the highest point, the judicial ladder. And that justice system, is it unable to serve justice to Justice Ayah Abine today?
I am not in a position to judge the justice system in Cameroon. I can only say that even as a Supreme Court judge, while in captivity, I went to court with a habeas corpus application. It was rejected by the High Court, rejected by the Court of Appeal, and I appealed to my colleagues of the Supreme Court. That was in 2017. Up to this moment I am talking, there's nothing before me that the case has been heard. Whereas by a Cameroonian law, the Criminal Procedure Code, the Supreme Court had 30 days. They have not done so up to now. We're in 2024, 7 years since. So that alone would lead anybody to draw conclusions as to the justice system. It's not for me to judge. I tried in the past to say a number of things that I thought were of general interest, and I paid dearly for it. I'm still paying dearly for it. Can you imagine that? Pension is my saving. How would anybody return my pension without due process? That is our justice system. I went to the African Commission for Human and People's Rights at the Gambia since April 2017. Anybody can calculate from April 2017 to today. The case has not been heard. A few months ago, my lawyer told me he had information that the file was missing. That was after there had been rumors upon rumors, even allegations that the government had compromised the commission. Even at the international level, I cannot obtain justice. We don't know if the case is still pending or truly the file is missing. Missing even at the international level.
You have taken some actions with regards to the authorities, even to the highest level, right into the presidency of the Republic, and you have not received any response. So where is the problem?
It's fertile ground for researchers, research fellows to go into it and dig out. All I can say is that in my early life, I grew up in part with a British soldier, late Colonel L.T. Valentine, and he impacted in me a lot of principles. One of them was never to keep anything in my stomach, on my mind, because those are not stores. So I speak out. While in Parliament, I spoke out. They didn't kill me, But Martinez Zogo, who repeated just what I had said over the years, I was in Parliament for 11 years, has been killed. And I got to a point where I said it was unconscionable. It was immoral. That's the meaning of unconscionable. It's legal jargon. That it was unconscionable to amend the Constitution to the benefit of an individual. I incurred a lot of hostility. I was still in CPDM at the time, hostilities from my friends. They even tried to table a law that would get me out of Parliament. I received death threats.
You told me earlier that you wrote to the presidency of the Republic and there was no response. I wanted to look at this camera now and send the same message that you put in that letter to the presidency to the head of state, Paul Biya, right now.
Mr. President of the Republic, if I stood against constitutional amendment, I had nothing against you. It was a matter of principle. Pension is a saving, money deducted from my salary over the period of my career. It is not money I have to earn. How on earth would your government sit on my money for 7 years, even at the time that I am on the brink of the grave? Mr. President, I leave it to your conscience. You may wish to ask yourself, if I were in Paul Ayah's position, and you happen to be Paul, the wonderful preacher, the wonderful teacher, if we bear that name truly, I leave it to your conscience.
This is just a single out of many cases of human rights violations in Cameroon today. A recent report by a group of civil society organizations highlighted close to 2,000 cases of human rights violations just for 2023 alone. In your opinion, what is creating this enabling ground for increased human rights violations in Cameroon today?
I said somewhere, and I'll say it here again with emphasis, that the day the international community talks about justice, that day is the beginning of social justice in the world. The international community talks about interest, British interest, French interest, American interest. Once that interest is safeguarded, it is meaningless to the West how many people die. It is meaningless to the West the principle of human rights, democracy. The trouble is that Cameroon is fantastically rich in so many diverse ways. Underground, look at the minerals, apart from oil, iron ore, manganese. On the land, you will drive kilometers upon kilometers of rubber, kilometers upon kilometers of banana, oil palm trees, a variety. Cameroon is fantastically rich. And any Western power, I don't say much about the East, although the Chinese are draining us in silently, but the West wants what we have, to the detriment of democracy, to the detriment of human rights, to the detriment of lives, human lives. Once they get what they want, It matters not what happens to us.
You're pointing an accusing finger towards the West, but within the national territory, we're talking about issues of human rights violations here and there, every now and then, femicide, sexual abuse, people who are tortured, illegal and indiscriminate arrest and detention of persons, hundreds of them who have been arrested in connection to the Anglophone crisis, and they are in detention. They have been there for so many years without being tried, without being charged, and all of these things happening within the national territory. And the judicial authorities are looking at this. The courts are not serving justice to the people, and so on and so forth.
I was just coming to the point. I have said elsewhere in the past that the world cannot have justice without a world gendarme. The West, for now, is the world gendarme. If they connive at the crimes done at the local level, if they promote those perpetrating the crimes, you cannot expect anything good at the local level. I do explain, for instance, my case. A retired Supreme Court judge. If I'm treated this way, what do you expect for the ordinary man? I'm not saying I'm superior to them. I'm just saying where I was. In the fountain of justice, if the water from that fountain cannot wash me, how do you expect somebody from the desert to be washed? What's happening at the local level is as a result of connivance, because they are compromised with our natural resources. They no longer have, the authority to speak against those crimes. So the people who lead us find that it is no man's land. It is like the Wild West in those days. The cowboy would just come with his gun and shoot without reason because of lawlessness. Now there's lawlessness, total lawlessness.
That takes us to governance. What do you think about the way Cameroon is governed today? Some Cameroonians are even asking if the country is actually governed, if there is a leader, though the head of state is there, the president is there, but Cameroonians are still asking if this country is governed, looking at the cacophony that we see sometimes in the functioning of the administrative mechanism.
You know the answer already. Everybody knows the answer. You just want me maybe to repeat what you know already. In which country have you heard that the office of the president writes to the prime minister through the secretary general under the prime minister? Is that governance? Is the prime minister the head of government that the office of the president treats with his secretary general and not directly with him? What leverage would the prime minister have over his subordinates if he is so depicted and treated? Where have you ever heard that for years, year in, year out, the Secretary General at the office of the President does anything in the name of haute instruction, whatever, haute instruction? So is there a president? That's the question that Cameroonians have to answer. If there's a president...
But the Constitution makes provision for delegation of powers to the Secretary General.
No. The Constitution equally makes provision for a president, a serving president, to resign if he finds that for whatever reason he cannot carry out his duties. There's nothing in the Constitution except a new Constitution there is now that the president relinquishes all his powers to the Secretary General, who is just a minister. They call Minister of State, the Secretary General, Minister of State. He's not the president of the republic. Who elected him? And therefore, he cannot perform all the functions of the president in the name of delegation of power.
With regards to this and other happenings in the country, and notably maybe in the economic perspective, where we have Cameroonians groaning under the weight of inflation, under the weight of increasing cost of living, especially with the recent increase in fuel prices, and which led to increase in prices of basic commodity, transport, and every other thing. And their voices, their cries, seem not to be heard.
Why are Cameroonians crying? Why should Cameroonians cry? When I was reading law, I came upon a certain Latin expression, delegatus non potest delegare. The president is the delegate of the people. The people put him there. He cannot delegate his functions. And if the people who put him there, who are more powerful because the people are always there. A president comes and goes, but the people are permanently there. How can the delegate of the people be more powerful than the people? Right now, with small bottles of Guinness, with Maggi cubes, the very people who are suffering, let me not say you say are suffering, they are, the very people who are suffering are calling on the president to stand so that there's continuance, the continuation of this way of life. Can you say those such people are suffering? I remember that when I wanted to stand presidential election in 2011, a well-meaning Cameroonian statesman called me and said, Paul, I know who you are. Cameroonians are not people worth fighting for. They will lead you to the middle of the river, and when they see the torrents, they will leave you there alone and withdraw. And you alone would be swept downstream. Those are Cameroonians. How can people who have the power be treated by a single individual to whom they delegated some of their powers? The president is elected by the people. He can never ever be more powerful than the people who elected him. And if the people are suffering and at the same time they're asking him to continue to be there, then they are not suffering.
But those who are asking him to continue to be there constitute just a small percentage of the masses, a small percentage of the huge chunk of the population who are living below the poverty line, who are living in hardship, in misery, and unable to afford 3 square meals a day, unable to treat themselves, unable to get potable water, to drink potable water, unable to have electricity, unable to have social amenities, and so on. Those who are down there, weeping every day.
What would you want me to say? Perhaps you want me to say something which I have never hesitated to say. That it is wrong to say that there is a more corrupt country in the world than Cameroon. Cameroon is the worst corrupt country in the world. The most and the worst. How can somebody who is suffering march in the streets tomorrow? The man causing me this suffering should be there forever. Truly, if somebody is suffering, he will lie on their back in the middle of the night and ask, Papa God, show me the way out. He won't receive Maggi cubes and get carried away. That very person may have suffered and educated the child to the university level. The child comes back, is asking for toothpaste, asking for money for soap. And that person marches in the street tomorrow. Under whatever compulsion, with an honest man, do that. And if the people are dishonest, they are responsible for their woes. They are answerable for their woes. Look at the children who were killed in 2008. Where were their parents? The young felt that they had suffered enough. They were killed, and the matter ended just there. So if the people cannot speak out, look at what's happening in Senegal. How more educated are those people? How less black are they? But here we accept everything joyfully and ask for more punishment. Remember, the Southwest chiefs sat here and asked the government to send more military, whatever, to kill their citizens in the name of fighting Amba. Whatever the case, would you ask somebody to come and kill your brother? But that's it. The very people asking for more punishment. I mean, if somebody wants to be punished, feeling is entirely personal. They cannot beat you there and I'm feeling, you cannot be hungry and I'm, no, it's entirely personal. If the person feeling doesn't feel or pretends not to feel, an outsider should not be held responsible. An outsider can never help that person out.
But the chiefs were asking for whatever they asked for to secure, because they said, or the government has been saying this, and it's actually the role of the military to protect the territorial integrity of the country, to protect the people, to ensure that there is peace and stability all across the board.
Without interrupting you, as a Cameroonian journalist here, as you said that, this very government refused to dialogue and preferred to kill its own citizens. I wrote more than 12 times pleading for dialogue, saying without dialogue, these are the consequences. Everything happening today, I pointed out. I went to the point where I wrote to the Secretary General of the United Nations. Don't allow this thing to get to a point where there will be military conflict. Because once it starts, there will be so many splinter groups that nobody will be responsible to anybody.
We'll surely
and that's where we are today.
We'll come back to that shortly. That looking at the governance mechanism of the country today, and from what you're saying, it can be concluded that the governance system has failed in its duties to protect the citizens, to make sure that the citizens have their right to dignity, their right to life, their right to health, their right to every other thing that is good for every human being. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe you were just reciting or reading my mind. But that's a fact. You don't need to read anybody's mind. That's a fact. Go through the whole of Buea town here. Come back to me and tell me that you've seen a single public tap. What are the citizens paying taxes for? If they cannot have even the basic thing that God has given us for free, water. So it is a fiasco. Even the blind see the failure of the system.
We're going to take a short break, time for us to go to the newsstands, and we are looking at what the newspapers reported this week in Cameroon. Municipal updates report the sufferings of inhabitants of the Ndian division trapped in their homes as floods overwhelmed Bamunso in the southwest region of Cameroon. Who is sitting on the files of the Bamenda market? The Post highlight the fact that 10 years after a prime ministerial decree and 4 years after the contract was given out, the market reconstruction project is still pending. As reported by the Guardian Post, Professor Kamto's Jean-Michel Nincho-led coalition consulted jailed separatist leaders within the context of the push for political transition in Cameroon. This is qualified by the Median as a desperate maneuver to oust President Paul Biya, efforts against which Territorial Administration Minister Atanganji Paul fires stern warnings describing the political alliances as illegal. The Voice reports the controversy sparked by Minister Tanganji's ban on the alliances, and another issue of the Guardian Post tells its readers that the Nincho-led coalition strikes back at Minister Tanganji. The Horizon questions the apparently extremely tense and nervous state of the BI regime over the transition drive of opposition parties. In the pilot, the paper informs its readers on how 350 million francs CFA disappeared in Sports Minister Mwele Kombi's office. According to The Sun, the government and the Cameroon People's Democratic Movement (CPDM) remain silent as Senate President Marcel Nyat Njifendi's absence holds all business in the upper house of Parliament. The Horizon reports that a new report alleges murdered journalist Martinez Zogo was spied by his alleged killers for 8 years. Popular celebrations nationwide amid poverty and hardship is the description of the 2024 International Women's Day in Cameroon on the front page of The Median. We're looking at the possibility of change. Speaking to a political analyst, a Cameroonian based in Cyprus, Lapana Tashamama, he said there is need for urgent change in Cameroon. Can this change be obtained in the ballot box, through the ballot box? Is it possible to have this change through the ballot box in 2025?
Anybody and everybody who has followed the conduct of election in Cameroon would automatically tell you no. There can be no change. Because there's no election. The results of elections are known before the actual voting. There can be no change. And change would have implied maybe a member of the opposition winning election. Where, first of all, is the opposition. The few political parties that give the impression they are of the opposition are attacked by the administration at all levels. At all levels. There is no way you can have free, transparent election in Cameroon. Free, fair, and transparent election in Cameroon.
What hinders that?
Election Cameroon, in the first place, is not in charge of elections in Cameroon. They register voters, then they apparently conduct the actual voting. From the time they finish the actual voting, where do you find election Cameroon? You only find commissions. So elections Cameroon does not really conduct election in Cameroon. And if anybody claims that the opposition is not winning because of maybe less registration than normally should be, a person is not right. In fact, the person is daydreaming. It's not the number of voters that determine election. It is the fairness of the election. It is the transparency of the election. But those elements are absent.
Opposition political parties and other civil society leaders, political analysts have been calling for a revision of the electoral code. But with that seemingly not coming anytime soon, there is now a call for the opposition to come together in a common front in 2025 to bring about a change at the helm of the state. There are two coalitions that have been put up and led by Honorable Jean-Michel Nincho, one, and the other by Olivier Billet. But first of all, do you think this idea of a coalition of the opposition can bring about any change? Can it succeed to turn the tide?
They've tried in the past unsuccessfully. I was in one of them when it came to the point of who should be the candidate, the whole thing got disintegrated in a split second. So I know not if things have changed to the point that one can really, give his money for the success of a similar thing. We've had it over the years. I just named, well, maybe I didn't name him. I talked about the Vice Minister of Justice. You see, today, listen to what he says. So how different are those who are there now? Because in the end, they'll turn around, maybe for a few francs, and say the opposite and cross the carpet.
Even before that happens, the Minister of Territorial Administration has banned the coalitions, saying that the coalitions are illegal. As a legalist, as a legal mind that you are, is there any legal backing in that decision of the Minister of Territorial Administration?
The real law in Cameroon is the unwritten law. In Cameroon today, even a ministerial note can change the constitution, the highest law of the land. So that is the real law in Cameroon, the unwritten law. And that law becomes that's unbreakable if it is in favor of the ruling party, the CPDM. In the last presidential election, I remember well, I had just been released, a year before. There was a coalition of 25 political parties that joined the president.
The G20, call themselves the G20.
Today we are talking even about presidential majority. Why is it legal when it is in favor of CPDM but illegal when it is the other way around? All over the world, we hear even rivals at the primary level of elections endorsing the candidate that is leading. People endorse, groups endorse.
Another idea that has been on the table of discussion within the circles of political parties of the opposition and championed by some of the political parties, including the CPP, the Cameroon People's Party, and other political parties, and even the Popular Action Party, and so on, is this idea of a political transition. Is this a feasible perspective of change in Cameroon?
That again, to me, is like daydreaming. It's like daydreaming. Cameroon is one person, the President of the Republic. When the present president took over, communities took him to every shrine in this country and empowered him. Even today is the fun of funds. Elsewhere they gave him the broom, they gave. So Cameroon is one person. If anybody tells you that there can be anything called transition without the will, the political will of the one man ruling Cameroon, it's an aberration. To be honest to ourselves, it is an aberration. In fact, somebody needs to show me how that can work. To the extent that I know Cameroon, in my 70s, I think I know a bit of Cameroon. To the extent that I know Cameroon, it cannot work.
Earlier, you blamed Cameroonians for the current situation of the country, and that is why political leaders like Kabanwala, agent of the CPP, have been calling on Cameroonians to stand up, to rise up and take up the challenge and press for a change and press for all of these irregularities to be brought to a halt and everything changed. Is there a possibility that Cameroonians can press the right button to have that change? without violence? Because she's been insisting on this, without violence, without bloodshed.
I don't believe that Cameroon is a small heaven on earth. In other words, Cameroon is like every other nation. People have taken their destiny in their hands in other countries. One of the most recent examples is Senegal. Without violence, as you say, people can stand up and say, we don't agree here, we agree there. But it just started here now. The very people who are in the initial meeting are those who would go to the government and tell all the lies against the group. And they can brand the group, they can brand it with any name and destroy. See, that is the Cameroonian. I don't know. I wrote a post some time ago wondering whether Jesus was crucified in Cameroon. The country is simply horrible. I've never seen a country where the more people get educated, the more, I don't know, they behave like imbeciles. The more educated they are, the more they behave like imbeciles. People who don't think well, the intellect is not properly developed. That is Cameroon.
There's another side of this whole thing, which many really don't like talking about it, and even the authorities see it as a taboo. But I think that it is critical, it is important to talk about it before it even gets to that point, or before it ever happens, if it will ever happen in Cameroon. I'm talking about what happened recently in Gabon, for example, where there was a change and things really happened, we can say, in a peaceful way, even though there was some kind of psychological violence, so to speak, with regards to President Bongo and his followers and so on. What do you think about that?
When I was studying equity, a branch of law called equity, I came upon what they call in equity even now, laches. Laches is what is often said in ordinary parlance, that you sleep on your rights. You see, Cameroonians have slept on their rights for too long to be able to get out of slumber one day and do the right thing. I would be the last man to want, an unconstitutional change. We can have a constitutional change if people understand and act as citizens, as people who love their country, without bringing in, the military. I read somewhere that the best military government is worse than the worst civilian government. Well, I don't know how true that is, but so it is. If they started the Anglophone war here like a joke. See where we are today. Those of us who cried out for dialogue were instead picked up, and we languished in, in captivity. I don't call it detention. We languished in captivity for months, only to be told to go home because there was nothing incriminating against me.
That is exactly what we'll be looking at in some few minutes, how to heal the nationhood fragmented or threatened by the more than 7-year-long armed conflict in the northwest and southwest regions of the country. Stay with us. We're bringing to you right now some interviews of the week.
This health center has about 13 villages. If you work for personal interest, who will be the beneficiary? I have people like Menge, Mesaka, Nyale, Mauzum that you use water crossing. She's never there. There is no drop there. Polio is the only thing that's beneficial here. Out of polio, there is nothing that can be given. Now, if you go to the health center presently, she's sick and she doesn't have an aide. There's no other assistant nurse that's helping her do one or two things.
sincerely, we are really far from our administrative headquarters. Because somebody living in Yandong, you pass through 2 subdivisions before you go to your administrative headquarters. For example, you pass through Konye, then you go to Kumbatri before going to Tombe. So, in fact, we are requesting for administrative headquarters so the administration should be nearer us. That one will solve us a very, very big problem.
Many Cameroonians living abroad are facing a lot of difficulties to register for the upcoming presidential election. And if you do not register, you cannot vote.
The delay is seen as a strategy to deprive them of their voting right.
On the 13th of July 2011, President Paul Biya promulgated a law granting voting right to all Cameroonians living abroad to participate for presidential election and referendum, that is general election. But since then, that right remains on pieces of paper. There are 2 kinds of Cameroon. One beautiful and democratic Cameroon on a pieces of papers, and one terrible Cameroon in reality. Sustainable peace in Cameroon can only come through free, fair, and transparent election.
We call this political repression. That is the way I'm going to call it. It's a political repression. So to me, I think that this is like using an iron fist on democracy. It's a shame. The first effect of a political repression is that it raises anger in people. Let me tell you, I want to give an example of what I mean here. If you look at what happened in 2016, the Anglophone section, with the lawyers and the teachers, that was what we call political repression. And what happened? Angers of people fled. And up to today, we are still suffering from the effects of that political repression. We thought that the government by now will have learned a lesson. But then, they are repeating the same mistake of 2016.
You welcome back. Those were interviews of the week. One of the major cracks on nationhood in Cameroon today is the more than 7-year-long socio-political and security tensions in the northwest and southwest regions of the country, of course emanating from the decade-old Anglophone problem. And today we're asking the question, how to heal the sick nationhood. Barrister Ayah Abine, how can the sick nationhood of Cameroon today be healed? How can the bonds be brought together, be strengthened?
First, by telling the truth, by facing facts. I recently read somewhere people talked about exchange of notes between the British High Commissioner, they call him Ambassador, and Ayah. And tell the truth. Let us face facts. The famous United Nations Resolution 15, 1606, parenthesis 15, of 21st April 1961, called on 3 governments, the UK, the Republic of Cameroon, and Southern Cameroons. Southern Cameroons are the government at that time, to come together and finalize the joining. That's the word they used, I think in capital letters, to finalize. Even quacks at law know that there is no international come together that is oral, that ends up in oral resolution, in oral whatever. Everything is documentary. The day Cameroonese and Cameroonians admit that the joining was inconclusive is the beginning of the resolution of the problem we have today. I hear you journalists call it crisis. How can you be fighting a war on the ground, from the air, with armored cars, and you call it crisis? It's a war. The day we admit that the decolonization of southern Cameroon ended inconclusively will be the beginning of the resolution of the present situation. Without that, we are just beating about the bush. Every day somebody says, we're returning to normal, situation returning to normalcy, and the next day, people are killed. Let us begin there and forge ahead. When I was in politics, I said, faced with the present situation, let us come together, come up with a constitution that will be adopted by the two sides, and we rule the country in a 10-state federation. That document between the two parties, even in the absence of the United Kingdom, would be a document that will evidence the joining. As of now, let the President of the Republic or whosoever else refer us to any document saying that there was joining. The UN resolution never mentioned the British High Commissioner, called him ambassador. It named 3 entities: the Republic of Cameroon, the United Kingdom, and the government of Southern Cameroons. Even in the absence of Britain, we can, as black people, Bantus, agree to be together on terms, state down the terms. If we don't agree, there's nothing wrong in being side by side as 2 contiguous countries.
Southern Cameroonians were asked if they want to become independent by joining La République du Cameroun at the time, or by joining the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the plebiscite.
You see, that's the international fraud in the whole thing. How can you become independent by joining? That's you become independent by leaning on somebody else. That's where the whole thing, where the whole fraud began. But to answer your question, the plebiscite was a declaration of intent. We want to join, to achieve independence by joining. Declaration of intent. And the United Nations itself came out with a resolution, 1608, bracket 15, of April 21, 1961, saying that these 3 entities I've named a number of times here, the United Kingdom, the Republic of Cameroon, and the government of Southern Cameroons, should come together and finalize. I've told you that word to the best of my memory. It's written in capital letters, to finalize. So long as that was not done, there's nothing final. There was nothing final about the joining or independence or whatever. I'm not saying it, I'm saying that's what the United Nations said should be done. And if anybody under the sun can show us today that is the document that the 3 entities met and agreed, these are the terms, if they bring us that document, all the killing today, everybody will tell those who are fighting that, look at, this is what was done by your forefathers, by your parents. What are you fighting for? Everybody will tell them, no, you are wrong. But glossing over everything, glossing over doesn't help anybody. When you tell them the truth, as I'm telling you here now, they send people after you to kill you. If they kill everybody, there will be, leaders of corpses, leaders of the dead. We'll tell them what can, bring us a lasting solution. And not by going to dish out money to people in Canada. Since they went to Canada, where are those Anglophone leaders? Do we hear them again? But when the money gets finished, they will go back to their original, stance. It won't help us. It's not helping us. Let us sit down and talk. Talk to the real people. You don't make a grand dialogue and you call a certain Bakossi boy to go there and pose as if he was Jesus dishing out instructions to his disciples. You call the real people, you talk together, you agree.
Not just to be sure that we're getting you clearly. When you talk about the real people, who are you referring to?
It's not for me to tell you who the real people are. The arrested people, they are in detention. Today they know that there are some leaders abroad. In the country here, the Anglophones have kept saying, even before Cardinal Tumi died, I kept saying like him, that nothing works until the Anglophones have met and elected their representatives and documented what they wanted. The Anglophones need to meet and tell you who the real people are. What I would be telling you the real people here, as who, in what capacity. The Anglophones should be allowed to meet. They will tell you who their leaders are. You sit down with them and dialogue. I believe that if things are clearly stated down as to our living together, peaceful coexistence, it may work. I'm not saying it will, it may. But the brute force will help nobody. The brute force is only costing us more lives. Both sides. Not only the fighters are killed, the military are equally killed. It's retarding the economy, the growth of our economy. It's retarding the country. We'll fight until what happens. And supposing we fight and people say, okay, we'll stop here. So that prevent, forestall a future fight. You have killed people. You've killed their parents. Those children are growing up with, animosity. No. The desire to revenge is entrenched in the human being, even in God. God sent away Lucifer because, he wanted to revenge himself. How can I put you here and you want to fight me? So that is in us. It's divine. So we handle the situation now, or we are preparing a situation worse than the present situation. I'm not a prophet, but often I have said, and it has come to pass. I wrote to the UN, today we are seeing it. I said dialogue. Today we see where the arms have taken us to. And the arms are taking us to.
During the 8th of March activities here in Boya and even in Kumba, we had some authorities, including the First Deputy Senior Division Office of the Meme Division, and even the First Deputy Mayor of Boya, I think so, calling on cessationist fighters, drop your guns, come out of the bushes, and we have been hearing this and on and on. And that seems not to be happening. Many are still taking up guns, many are still in the bushes. What can be done to bring down the guns and allow people to go about their activities while long-term solutions are being provided to the problem?
I have put down the guns and all that, go to DDA centers, it's a sing-song. In fact, those who are still singing it are people of very bad faith. We've heard it over and over, and nothing good has come out of it. I heard some Francophones say that it's only when people are convicted that the president can lawfully release them by way of pardon, by way of rehabilitation, whatever. When you ask them the question, the president has released a number of Anglophone detainees. In my case, there was Mr. Agbobala, there was Dr. Niba, there was myself, and a host of others. The president should use that same law and release all these Anglophones who are waiting trial and languishing in jail under terrible conditions, appalling conditions over the years. You should release them. Then all those who have been convicted should be released. Then they create enabling instrument. Once that is done, things will start piping down. Then they will now create enabling environment where the Anglophones would meet, elect their representatives, you can call them leaders, who will meet with their government, and they decide the southern Cameroon's unresolved joining. Unresolved joining. I say this without bias, without intending to hurt anybody, but as a fact that so long as the UN call for the three entities to meet and finalize, so long as we have no evidence of how they finalized what was the joining, the so-called federal constitution has nothing to do with finalizing by three entities. That can never ever be invoked. Those who invoke are just people who don't have small elementary knowledge of the law. That cannot be invoked. So long as there is absence of that document, the government of the Republic of Cameroon and Anglophone leaders will sit down peacefully and agree or disagree. There's no law that they must agree. I'm not saying I'm not the one to, even if they put me there, I mean, the cripple that I am, I may not even be able to attend. But even if I were there, I would just be a lone voice, a single voice. The people would agree or disagree. It would be their right to agree or disagree. Why not? You would invoke the plebiscite. I would say the plebiscite was just a declaration of intent. You can call me from sleep any day, any time, and I'll repeat the same thing because that is factual. Nobody can change the truth. A lie can be disproved. Nobody can ever disprove the truth.
Right, Justice Ayah Paul Abine, before we go, I want you to turn to this camera and send a message to Anglophones, Cameroonians from the northwest and southwest regions of the country, with regards to the imperative importance of coming together, and not just coming together in a physical place, not just coming together physically, but coming together in oneness of mind, looking towards the same direction, and agreeing on what they want. Because there is an issue about some demanding one thing, others demanding another, some asking for federation, others asking for independence, others asking for decentralization, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Well, fellow countrymen, when Jonathan talks of this group wanting, that group wanting, who mandated those groups? The power lies with the people of southern Cameroons, with southern Cameroonians. I know some people would want to call them Ambazonians. Some people would hate to hear that word Ambazonians. These people must come together.
I'll prefer you talk about former southern Cameroons, because as of now we don't have southern Cameroons anymore. We have northwest and southwest.
No, well, you are saying that is your own stance. I'm talking as a lawyer. I've said here over and over that nothing was finalized. And whatever was created from fiction doesn't stand. So I talk of southern Cameroonians, not former southern Cameroonians. We were together. They can say the white man forced us together. So too were other countries in Africa. So too were other communities, other black communities in Africa. We have a common destiny. We have a common destiny. If only by our intermarriages, by our system of education, by our having a powerful lingua franca called Pidgin English. We do more harm to posterity if we shake our responsibility to come together and find a lasting solution, a peaceful solution. Look at so many young people dying in the bushes, so many bitten by mosquitoes, those by snakes, tree branches falling overnight and killing people. Let us speak with one voice. As of now, nobody can represent us. We have not mandated any group of people to represent us. But for unity of purpose will help us out in a peaceful way for the sake of the people of today and for posterity.
Thank you very much, Barrister Ayah Abine, former judge of the Supreme Court of Cameroon, former member of Cameroon's lower house of parliament, founder and former president of the Popular Action Party. Thank you so much for your time.
Well, I cannot be thankful enough for you coming to me. After several years, maybe my voice will be heard. And the government should know that my pension is my saving, is my right. They have no right to sentence me to extrajudicial killing as they are doing right now. Whoever has any link with the President of the Republic should tell him that that's what I have said.
Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. That's it for today's edition of The Insight. You can follow the program on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, and you can also follow the rebroadcast of the program on Friday at 5 p.m. Thank you for staying with us. Goodbye.